All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Friday, November 4th of 2022. Looking ahead to the weekend, got an action-packed weekend full of great DFS slates. Hoping everybody is looking forward to getting in on the action as well. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS questions that come in our Discord server in the office hours channel. If you're not a member of our Discord server, there's a link in the description below. Highly recommend getting joined up, getting in there, getting your questions answered on stream. If you're just joining and you have some questions, go ahead and get those in the YouTube chat. We will get to all of the questions before the end of the stream. Promise you guys that, as always. But with that being said, I pinged the channel late that we were going to be starting the stream today, so apologies there. We do have some questions to get us rolling today. So if you have more questions, get them in the chat and we will keep the stream going. So that being said, going to start with a question here from Snowman11. Came in Discord earlier. So going to get us going here. Let me get the SaberSim app pulled up. And this question says, best time to build lineups and add them to DK, NFL, and NBA. Okay, good question. So NBA, I would say that it, barring injury news, it is okay to probably start building your lineups, especially for the first set of games that kick off. I would say probably within 30 minutes of the slate lock. I think that, news is constantly breaking in NBA. If you don't have a process that can basically allow you to absorb news and make adjustments in a small period of time, I think 30 minutes is probably too much. I would say probably even less. But, if I would say like for me personally, I'll answer for myself, about 10 to 15 minutes before the slate locks, if there are still not starting lineups out, I will start building. Like, I need about 10 minutes to do my run my lineups, make my exposure adjustments, and get my lineups in. That doesn't mean that I only start my process 10 minutes before, because before that I'm doing research. But I would say, do your research and then try and wait till all of the lineups are released. You could see when the lineups are released and when sims are running in the NBA lineup alert channel in Discord. When you see sims complete, you can come in here, hit the refresh icon, and you'll see the last updated update. And then the teams will have green check marks on the team. And then if you click into a team, the team will have green check marks for the players that are confirmed starting. So, it's best practice is wait till all of the lineups are confirmed for like the beginning of the slate, and then build your lineups. Depending on how long your process is, to from build lineups to adjust lineups to, revise if needed to put lineups in, you kind of have to gauge that for yourself and say, okay, I have a hard cutoff of 15 minutes before the slate. I'm going to start building with the latest available news and just go from there. And sometimes you have to make those hard decisions. I think it's okay. Just remember that it is a problem that everybody in your contest is dealing with. It is not just you. So, there's like the only edge to be had is that if it takes somebody less time to do the steps that require it to take, 15 minutes, maybe like I could do it in 10, maybe you could do it in 15. So I have like that extra 5 minutes. So, I would just say try and limit what you're doing in the post build screen as much as you possibly can. I think it's okay to run some test builds, based on your research before then, and see who the builder's liking. You can go through some of that build, review, revise before final lineups come out. I think like that is like the key takeaway, is that you can run builds and you can run test builds, and you could see if the plays you like, SaberSim is liking them. And if SaberSim is not liking them, you can go through those build, review, revise cycles before the final lineups come out, make the projection adjustments you need. That way, when final lineups come out, you run that final batch of the actual build you're going to use to build your lineups that you're taking into the pool. You should be good. And the lineups that you get should look like what you want. So figure out how much time it takes you from, from clicking build lineups, start new build, to how long it takes you to make your adjustments and put those into your contests, and kind of work backwards from there. But I think the key takeaway is, do your research, do your test builds, go through your build, review, revise cycles before that point. That way, once those final lineups do come out or any final news comes out, you can act on it and get the lineups you want and get those into your contests right away. Okay, so that was my spiel for NBA. So for NFL, I think it's totally okay to start building lineups like, okay, so working backwards. Inactives get released 90 minutes before game time. The final SaberSim sims run 1 hour to lock. So if you're looking at NFL and the slate starts at 1 p.m. Eastern, so final sims are going to run at 12 p.m. Eastern. Inactive news is going to come out at 11 a.m. 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. It is okay to build lineups, even have your final lineup set before then. It all depends on the news that comes out and the news that is pending. A lot of times, the players that are going to be ruled inactive are wide receiver 4s, wide receiver 5s, guys on special teams, like kind of those guys that you probably aren't getting a lot in your lineup in the first place. I personally like to build my lineups before then. I get on in the morning, I build my lineups, I wait for inactives to come out. The first thing I do is, once those final sims run, I come in here, I refresh the projections, and I see if this lightning bolt is on. If this lightning bolt is red, that tells me that there are players in my lineups that are now ruled out for the slate since the inactives came out. I'll go in here and I'll see who's ruled out. I'll see how many lineups I have them in. And, if it's like one random lineup where some guy was in, I might just do like a quick swap to take care of that one lineup of the, hundreds of unique lineups I have, and be done with it. I don't think it's worth redoing all the work at that point. If, Sunday comes and somebody in the morning games, maybe Austin Eckler gets ruled out, then, I probably have like a ton of Eckler, and that is cause for rebuilding from scratch. And that's okay. I think that you should be comfortable like building your lineups before that point. Or if that, there are like some real like game time decision guys that can like flip the slate on its head if they get ruled out, it's also okay to wait. But, you should be good to go an hour to game time. You could still do all your research. You could still do test builds before then. Some of it might not be as useful if slate breaks one way or another. But I think, for both sports, just kind of remember, like, it's okay to do research and test builds and draw conclusions and kind of figure out how you want to approach a slate before the final sims run. But it's always best practice to come back to the app after final sims have run, just to either one, check your lineups, make sure that they're still viable and no news broke that would cause you to need to change, or two, to make sure like all your players are in. So those are my thoughts there, Snowman. Let me know if anybody has any follow-up there. Going to hit this next question here from James. And looks like James said, is there a specific overall lineup ownership percentage that's between a certain range for the winner of a contest like the SPY? What's the best way to guarantee your lineup will be competitive in a contest like that, certain build constructs, etc.? Okay, James. So off the top of my head, I don't know what the SPY is, what exact contest that is. But I'm gonna go over to DraftKings really quickly, go over to the NFL lobby, and then just type in the SPY. So okay, so the SPY is a $100 single entry contest. Looks like it's in the 1,000 to 10,000 entrant range, with a couple different options of the SPY opening up as the week progresses. It looks like there's 3 different versions of the SPY. So right off the bat, uh, the one thing that I would say is that if you go into the lobby and, I'm not a Rainmakers guy. I don't participate in Rainmakers, and I probably won't. But if you're playing the big SPY, the 4,444 entry one, last place, or not last place, but like the bottom tier of payouts is an Elevate rare pack. So just understand that, like, there is a subset of payouts. It looks like 500 spots that are not getting cash value. You are instead getting Rainmakers packs. So you have to finish even higher to actually like cash with like cash money. So that's something I would take into account if I wanted to determine which version of the SPY that I'm playing. It seems like, DraftKings is, kind of trying to work it in there. It's kind of hard to even like notice that right off the bat. So if I was signing up for the SPY, I would probably play the second tier SPY, where they are not giving out Rainmakers packs and the payout structure is more similar to what they usually run. So just a side note there on the SPY. And then going back to your original question, is there a specific overall lineup ownership percentage that's between a certain range for the winner of a contest like the SPY? So that's not research we do here. I know I know there are other companies that do research like this and kind of put out guidelines at the beginning of the year for Millie Maker contests and some ownership and things like that. We really don't like to use hard and fast rules here. Over at SaberSim, we think that it's just a very blunt way of like trying to accomplish a certain goal. What we really try and pride ourselves on is our back testing of our sliders and our contest sims that we run in order to come up with this data. So I think like the best thing to do is come in here, set your style to GPP, set your entry to single, and then set your entrance to the number of entries in the contest. It'd be 1 to 10,000. And these sliders, like this much correlation, like how highly correlation is going to be valued, how highly ownership fade is going to be valued, how highly sim diversity is going to be valued, are back tested based on contest sims that we run. And we determine that these settings and this balance of correlation, ownership, and sim diversity will lead to the highest positive EV of your lineups in the long run. So I think like that is the best way to think about it. If you want to work in ownership rules into your process, you can easily do that in using our aggregate rules. So, if you want to come in here and say, my own sum is no more than X, you could totally do that. I'm not going to be the right person to give you that answer, frankly, because I don't use a rule like that. And, I've had conversations with other members of the team, and that's just not something that we kind of internally use like regularly. But I think like ownership rules are better in sports or contest types where avoiding duplication is more important, like showdowns, like MMA, etc. In sports like that, I would even go a step further and not use some ownership. I would rather use like product ownership or geo mean, which is like a version of product ownership that is like a little easier to use. If you're looking for some background on, geo mean and product ownership, Jordan and I did an awesome segment talking about it, explaining it in depth, formulas on the screen in Word, just kind of diving through there, and we just like really did a deep dive when this originally came out. So where I would point you to is if you were to go to our YouTube channel and go over to the playlists, you go to the office hours playlist, and you will see this video right here called DFS Q&A, product ownership and geometric mean. There are timestamps. We hit it right at the beginning of the show, like a 30-minute segment talking about, pros and cons of these techniques and how to work them into your process. I think that product ownership is probably objectively better than some ownership, but if you're looking for a deep dive, that's the place to go to learn about it. But anyways, gonna continue with the questions here. Got a question here from Phantom. I think this is a good question that bars some review from time to time. Phantom said, coming from virtually no lineup builder optimizer to SaberSim is a bit overwhelming. Honestly, I've been trying to watch as many videos as possible, follow the profit plan, although I don't have a large bankroll, and just play around with the builder and sliders to see what I get. What would the best advice for someone like me when building contest lineups be to just keep it simple? Okay, really good question, Phantom. So the first thing that catches my eye right off the bat is when you say right here, would the you say, okay, it says, and just play around with the builder and sliders to see what I get. So I think that adjusting the sliders and running builds at different slider settings for different contests to kind of see what they're doing is a great way to kind of understand the app. I would say, run it like, let me pull the stream back up. Run the sliders for single entries and then see what your pool of lineups looks like. Run it for 150 max where the sliders are way up and see what that looks like. Run it with sliders off. Run it with 0-0-10. Run it with all different types of combinations and kind of get an idea of how different things are valued in different types of contests. What is going on with your player pool? You can look at, the type of lineups you're getting, the stack constructions, how many players are paired with your quarterback, how many times are you getting QB plus no skill player stacks. So I think all of these things combined is, really great ways to kind of get used to the tool overall. And you can see here, like, these are the things that I'm talking about going and looking at. So if we were to click into a build, I think this is from yesterday, but you can go into any build. And if you're really trying to just like kind of learn, I would say do two things. Make sure that you can see this pool exposure column over here on the right. I think it gets hidden. The best way to do it is to just hide one of these other columns. I tend to hide like the status or the value early in the week, just so I can see that and kind of, say how much exposure I'm getting in my 20 lineups versus how much exposure I'm getting in my entire pool of 500, and kind of use that to see, how SaberSim is pushing certain players into my lineup and keeping other players out. I like to go into these stack types. You could do the same thing here. What stack types is it favoring? What stack types are in my pool that SaberSim is avoiding? And you can look at game stacks. Pretty interesting that like we're getting no Chargers Atlanta, even though they're about like 9%. And then we have a couple lineups with the Vegas, Jacksonville, and Carolina, Cincinnati at lower pool exposure. But, I definitely think you're on the right path. Just run builds, see what it gives you. One note of caution is that when you finally go to run your builds for whatever contest you are playing, set the sliders back to the defaults and don't adjust them. At this point, you've kind of played around with different settings, kind of seen what they did. Like the settings that we are giving to you are the best settings for the contest you're playing based on our back testing. And if the sliders were better at a different spot, we would move them because that would make sense. But we're telling you, like, trust us, like these are the best settings. This is the best amount of weight of correlation and ownership fade and sim diversity for this type of contest. So just want to reiterate that point. But, going back to like process, right? So going back to the process. So I just want to reiterate, like SaberSim is doing all the hard work for you. All this data you see are simulation data. A ton of work goes into the sims and making sure that the sims are accurate every week. If you click on any individual player, you're going to see a range of outcomes for the player. And this is just a summary of how often a certain player scores a certain amount of points in our simulations. We have correlation data. We have all of these different things to try and kind of show you what is going on behind the scenes in like a summary format. And I think that your time is always going to be best spent in the post build screen with none to minimal adjustments in the home screen and managing your risk, managing your exposures, trying to get to players that you, for one reason or another, want to play. You did some research, you read some articles, you listened to some podcasts, and you just have like some convictions that players are going to be good plays and you kind of want to get to those lineups. I encourage you to like run some default builds and kind of see what SaberSim is giving you and listen to SaberSim. I really recommend that people only try and focus on a handful of players where they want to kind of take a stand or make adjustments and let SaberSim handle the rest. So, what I tell a lot of people is that, so this leverage column is going to tell you, who your highest leverage play is, which means like you have more of this player than the field is expected to have. And you're also going to have negative leverage, which means you have less of this player than the field is expected to have. And I think your time is always best spent on the like max and min sides of the player spectrum. You're going to have a lot of guys in the middle where you are like pretty close / like matching the field on. And I think like, let SaberSim handle like the meat in the middle, and you kind of trim the fat off of the ends and make sure like you're handling like the outliers and making sure that there's not too much risk in your portfolio to where, all of your lineups have Robert Tonyan and he's like your make it or break it guy. That's probably too much risk for me. I might dial that down and play something with like just not have that much leverage to a single player in a sport where injuries happen often. So that's what I really recommend to people is, SaberSim is great at building positive EV lineups, but it doesn't understand risk management. And that's where it is a combination of man plus machine to come up with a good, strong portfolio that you are comfortable taking with you into your contests on Sunday. I'll say like, if you build your lineups and you submit them and you feel uneasy about it and things don't go your way and like you're upset, like I think you probably didn't do enough risk management. Maybe the portfolio of lineups that you took into your contest were too high risk and maybe you should have dialed that down. Our min unique players filter is an option, is an awesome option for decreasing inter lineup correlation. What this feature does is that it will make sure whatever you set this to. So right now, every lineup I'm seeing has at least one player different, but that also means that they share 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so there's 9 players in the lineup. They can technically share up to 8 players. That doesn't mean that's the case, but that means that like that is an option in this scenario. So, what we can do is, hold on, let me resort this, is we can use this filter and say, you know what, I don't want the players in my lineup. I don't want to have the option of having that many same players in every lineup. Let me increase this to 3. And then we can see how far down in the pool we have to go. Only line up 26. And I could increase this to 4. So what we generally recommend is trying to increase your min unique players as high as you can while still maintaining a strong portfolio. What that kind of means is what we generally recommend is don't go further than 25 to 50% of the way into your pool of lineups. If you reach that point, I would dial the min unique players back down. So we'll just demo this. We're at 5, which is really awesome. We're at 6. So at this point, there are 9 players. I know that out of the 20 lineups I have, every lineup has at least 6 players different from one of the other lineups, and I am still in the top 50% of my pool, because the 50% would be 250. So I would probably stop right about here. And then I know that the 3 players that are being shared are probably like really, really good plays and are in a great spot. So this is a way of like managing your exposures, but allowing SaberSims to still put the best plays into your lineup and work around that. So like, to me, this would tell me Joe Mixon is like in a really good spot this week, and SaberSim wanted to maintain its exposure to Joe Mixon and thought that the best value add was to move the pieces around Joe Mixon around and not him. I think a lot of times the way people would adjust their exposures to try and be less risky is to just come and decrease the max exposure of the top exposed players. SaberSim's telling you, no, let's move all these other guys around. They're less important than Joe Mixon is. So I think it's like a more organic way of maintaining exposures to the best plays while still decreasing inter-lineup correlation. So those are my thoughts there. Let me know if anyone has any questions. And going to keep moving here. Got a question from MStar79. Going to get this in the chat, and we will get going. Question says, sorry if this has been asked a lot recently. Haven't been able to watch lately. So I saw Jordan's video about upping min uniques until your bottom lineup Saber score rank is about 20 to 25% of the total pool. Use an NFL slate as the example. Question, would this apply to NBA as well as NFL? Or should NBA have fewer min uniques because it isn't as high variance? Thanks. Okay. Didn't even know this question was next up in the queue. Just really builds on the last question that we were just talking about. And, just to talk about this for NBA, the short answer is that yes, you should use it in the same exact format. The only time that I would suggest being more cautious with your min uniques is if you're playing Showdown or MMA, but particularly Showdown. So we did a demo with Showdown a couple weeks ago, and we were basically only able to get like 2 min uniques. And the reason for that, first and foremost, is because there are just less players in the lineup. We just did the demo for NFL, and there were 9 players in an NFL Showdown lineup. There's only 6. But, one thing we noticed is that also when you start increasing the number of min uniques, you start getting a lot of lower owned captains because SaberSim is being forced to try and meet this rule. So I think a lot of times in contest formats where you're searching for like the optimal play, a lot of the time to bink, sometimes it's like a one player swap. You have all the right pieces, but you just didn't get that one piece right, and you only needed to swap one player. By increasing your min uniques to 2, you're forcing every lineup to have at least 2 players different. So I just think that there's a lot more opportunity to miss certain lineups by forcing in 2 min uniques in a sport like Showdown. But for NBA, I would use it the exact same way as we just demoed, and that would be by trying to increase this number to a spot in the pool that we're comfortable still playing lineups in the pool. So we just increase this to 5. Now we're getting lineup rank 432, 379, like that bottom half of the pool. I would dial this back to 4, and I would be a lot happier playing, rank 120 as like the lowest Saber score rank lineup in the lineups that I'm taking with me into my contest. I like it a lot better if you're, still not feeling some of this exposure, then you can dial this back and see what the builder gives you. So, I'm going to decrease Jonathan Kuminga to 75 and maybe Jalen McDaniels to 50. I'm going to hit apply, and then I'm going to see where that takes me. So that took me pretty far in the pool. if I had, I would, ask if I really cared that much about having less of these two players and make a decision. If the answer is yes, I want less of those players, then you could come in and readjust your min uniques and see where that brings you. Or two is, you could turn this back off. And just remember, we just made the update this week where your exposure adjustments do not apply automatically unless you hit this, you turn this auto apply exposures on. Right now, it is not turned on, and I would have to hit this apply after making all of my changes to get those to apply. So just a couple notes there, everybody. But good question. We're going to keep the stream moving today. Okay. Snowman said, thank you. Happy to answer your question, Snowman. Looks like one thing that was brought up, and if you guys have more questions about min uniques, an awesome resource is if you go into the settings in the top right and you go to help. So it's going to open up the SaberSim help docs, and I'm going to pull those up really quickly here. So this is like our help doc landing page. You can go down here to frequently asked questions, go to view more. And then once you hit that view more, you can come in here and you can search for articles. So you can search for anything you want. You want to search for, min uniques, you could type that in, and then boom, we have a min unique article right here. We have other times where min uniques are mentioned in the transcripts. So you can go through here and, how many min uniques should I have? I think Jordan does an awesome job with the videos that he puts on here. A lot of you guys know Jordan from all the time he spent doing this show, and all of this content is really good content. So I would highly recommend, if you have more questions, the SaberSim.com/support is another awesome resource to check out. So gonna get SaberSim pulled back up here, and then we are gonna keep it rolling. That was the last question in the Discord, everybody. Gonna move over to YouTube chat now. Looks like we got a handful of questions. Got a comment here from George. Said, what's up, Andrew? First time here, just signed up today. Welcome, George. Happy to have you. If you have any questions, get them in the chat. And just, that's what this show is for, to help anybody with, how to use the app or strategy. We cover a range of topics, and we cover any and all sports. So happy to have you, and get in on the action. Don't be a stranger. All right. Joseph said, how similar are single entry builds versus 20 max? Okay. So good question. I would say the best way to find that out is to go and look at the slider settings for the different contests. So, a lot of the times your single entries are going to be like usually in the 1 to 10,000 range, for especially like for NBA. And, you're going to see like we're valuing correlation at like a low value. Ownership fade is off. We don't really care about ownership fade. And we have like a moderate sim diversity. If I crank this up to a 20 max, usually the 20 maxes are like in the 10 to 50,000 entrant range. Correlation goes up slightly, but now we are taking into account ownership fade, and our sim diversity is still moderate. So, based on this, I would say not that different. The only big thing to me is that ownership fade went from 0 to 2. So what this means is that when we run the sims and pull the projections from the randomly sampled sims, we are now taking into account ownership in that, I guess, like phase. So, what we're doing is we're comparing the player projections to the player's ownership on a position by position basis, and seeing how they grade out with an ownership metric applied to that. So if a player is, highly owned, he might get a little bit of a worse grade in that, and when the ownership fade is turned higher. And then similarly, if a player is low owned, they're going to get a better ownership fade grade in that situation, and that will be taken into account when building your lineup. So I think like this ownership component starts to become more important as you start to MME and play these 20 max and play like the 150 max. You'll probably see ownership go up even a little more. Sim diversity gets higher. That's allowing a larger pool of players into your lineups, probably to kind of try and find some of those outlier plays that might not grade out on a average mean based approach. But because we're randomly sampling the sims and because we have a range of outcomes for the players, we are able to absorb this data and use it to build your lineups a lot better than traditional optimizers are that are just using randomness, just treating players as if they are normally distributed. So those are my thoughts there. All right, scrolling down through YouTube chat. Looks like we have a couple more questions here. Not too many. So if you guys got questions, get them in the chat now. But just going to keep rolling. I see a question here from Ryan Nelson. Ryan said, only going to play the 20 max contest on DK. Do you like playing same 20 lineups or playing 60 unique lineups? Okay, good question. So, if you are playing NBA on DraftKings, 3 common contests are the quarter jukebox, which is a 25-cent 20 max, the $1 20 max, and the $4 20 max. If I were playing those 3 contests, I would build 60 unique lineups and I would probably uniquely random fill them. So, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to build 60 lineups. And then what I'm going to do is okay, I like this lineup set. And then when I go to fill my lineups, and I think I'm playing those contests. So let's just get this file in here. I'll kind of show you guys what we're talking about. So going to get the file uploaded, going to get that in there, and going to go back to my build. So I like these lineups. I built 60. Great. So I'm going to go sort here by entries, and I'm going to pick the 3 contests we're just talking about, right? So that would be these 3 contests. So I'm going to check them in here, and then I'm going to take my lineups 60, and I'm personally going to uniquely random fill them. And that means that of the 60 lineups, any 20 can go into each of these contests, but I know that each lineup is only being used one time. So it's personally how I like to do it. And my reasoning for that is that I think that the EV of a lineup is a lot closer to each other than you might think intuitively. I don't think that my 1 through 20 is that much different than my 21 through 40 if I were just taking the top 60 lineups in my pool. So I don't care to uniquely rank fill them. I think it can feel bad when your best lineup comes in the quarter jukebox and then you win the quarter jukebox as opposed to winning the $4. That kind of sucks. So if that's something that concerns you, we have this unique rank fill method where you can move these contests around and fill them, kind of by entry fee. So if I wanted to go, okay, I want my top 20 in the $4, I want my next 20 in the $1, and then my next 20 in the quarter jukebox, you could move the contests around using this little grab on the left, uniquely rank fill them, and then you'll know that they were filled descending. So, if you win the quarter, it was one of the lower lineups in your build, which might make you feel a little better. But I think overall, the way I think about it is that, if I'm staying in that top 25 to 50% of my pool of lineups, applying min uniques, I think that it's totally okay to uniquely random fill it, and I'll accept the variance in that situation. So that's how I like to think about it. But we're going to keep moving here. Got a question from Matthew. And Matthew said, can you explain a process for slate review using SaberSim, NBA or NFL preferably? How should I evaluate my process if I have a high scoring / winning lineup in my pool, but not in my specific group of lineups? And how should I evaluate my process if I was way off and the winning lineup or players wasn't in my pool of lineups at all? Okay, really good question here. So what I will say is that if you are going to do this, I would recommend doing this over a multi-week sample. So I wouldn't just go back to yesterday's slate where I lost and draw a bunch of conclusions and say, okay, I'm going to make all these changes to my process. Because what happens when you don't do good again? You're basically restarting your process from scratch every single day. And that sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like unnecessary, to be quite honest, because Sabres DFS is like a high variance game, and even the best of the best players, the giant squids, the Max Steinbergs, experience this same variance. You could be a really good player with a really high expectation of winning and still lose over multiple weeks, over multiple months, but be a winning player overall. It's just the nature of the game. So I think that it's good to review your process, but I think that reviewing it too quickly or with too small of like or like with a magnifying glass on like on a calendar, day by day is not a good approach overall. So what I would do is like I would take your approach, and especially for like something like NBA, NBA is like a daily sport. Hopefully you're playing like multiple days a week, and you can do like the same process at its core with some small tweaks for like 2 to 3 weeks. See how that's working out. An awesome metric to use is if you can um, afford it, is Roto Tracker. I believe they have like a free. They either have a free version or a cheaper version where you can upload like 750 entries. And in this version of the tool, you can go in and look at your finish position. It's something that we talk about a lot, is top 1% equity, or what I like to talk about is like they offer 0.5% buckets or even 0.1% buckets. So what this is you want to see how often you come in the highest percentiles of a contest compared to like the average. So the average, like if it's like 100-person contest and you had one single entry, then you would come in the top 1%. If everyone was of the same skill level, 1% of the time, and then come in second 1% of the time to reach like 100% total. So what you can do is you can go in and you can look at your finish position and see how often you're coming in the top 1% of the standings in your contests. Are you coming in more than that? Are you coming in at that? Or are you coming in less than that? I think like if you can prove over a good sample that you are getting like 1.5% of your entries into the top 1% of your contests, you're probably doing something right. And even if the results haven't been there financially, I think that your process is probably pretty good, and you just got to keep grinding it out, keep using good bankroll management, keep using good contest selection guidelines. The DFS profit plan is an awesome contest selection guideline that I recommend using. That's our own internal one. If you're not familiar with it, you can find it on our YouTube channel. But you gotta basically like write out the variance, and you gotta hope that you can capitalize. So just reminder, the DFS profit plan, if you go to our YouTube, you go to home, you go to new here, start here first. We break down a contest selection framework in a short 17-minute video. I use it myself. I really enjoy it. It helps me smooth out the variance while I'm looking for those big wins to kind of take me to the next step in my of my bankroll so I can play bigger contests. I've had a lot of success with it overall. So I would highly recommend following that, and just know that the variance can take time to work itself out. But I think that finish position, top 1% equity is awesome. I would say that don't look too much on a slate by slate basis, and take it more on like a 2 to 3 week period of tracking results, tracking finish position, and seeing how you can kind of draw conclusions over a longer sample. So it's just important to exercise bankroll management in that time window so you don't go broke before you can figure out if your process is indeed working or not. So that's my best advice. Matthew, let me know if you have any more questions. Got a question here from Bryson. Said, when adjusting min unique players for NFL, are you able to adjust this number differently based on your stacks? Example, 2 min uniques for Geno stacks, 3 min uniques for Tua stacks in the same build. Okay, so Bryson, you are not able to do that at the moment. So what this does, and let's go back to NFL. So we're going to go back to this NFL build that we ran, and what the min unique players is doing is it is just looking at each lineup. It's looking at all 500 lineups and kind of treating them all the same. It doesn't care who the players are in the lineup. I think what you're describing would be like the V2 of the min unique players in the build screen. Sounds like a really cool idea. I'll log it as a feature request and take it back to the team. I think it's like, probably the next step in the min unique elevation or process. So it sounds like a pretty cool idea. And I'll log it as a feature request. So just know that I'll make the team aware of that, because I'm always taking feature requests on here. A lot of great ideas come from the community, so always happy to take those back to the team. So I'm just gonna make a quick note here because it came in a YouTube chat. Bryson, min uniques based on, I would say, like based on players, pretty much / stacks. And then I'll make a note of that. So looks like Joseph said, perfect, thanks, all based on the slider settings. Definitely. I think the sliders are like your best indication of what SaberSim is trying to do on a given slate, or what SaberSim thinks the best approach for a given slate is. And that's based on, lots and lots of data, lots and lots of back testing. Michael said, thank you. You guys are welcome. And then Bryson also said, thanks, Andrew. Much, much appreciated. So appreciate all of the thank yous. Happy to hear that, I'm answering your guys' questions and doing a good job. You guys make this stream possible each and every week. Reminder, starting Monday, this stream will be at 2 p.m. Eastern. It was the old stream time, and it turns out it was the best stream time. So we're going full circle. We're going back to 2 p.m. Eastern. Seems like we get a lot more live questions in these earlier windows. Really love interacting with everyone live, participating in the chat, getting your questions answered. So we will be right back 2 p.m. Eastern on Monday. I will put an announcement in the Discord. If you are not participating in our weekly max challenge, I highly recommend getting in on the action. If you don't know what the max challenge is, it is a giveaway that we have been doing since last NFL season, giving away awesome prizes. We've already had 3 people win a championship belt for winning the mini max tournament. If you don't know how to get signed up and you are in the Discord, if you go over to the NFL channel, there is a pinned message up at the top that tells you how to get started and where to sign up and what you need to do to participate, giving out awesome awards all season long. And get in on the action, and good luck in your contest this week, everybody. Until Monday, I will see you. Take care.